Welcome to my channel. So this video is being put on the internet to remind people that the internet is not the total reference source that you think it is. It may contain a huge amount of information, but it's very hard to sort that information and to stay on track. We don't have a system in our internet or www.whatever.orgs.coms, whatever system you want to use, .govs. We do not have a focused, organized system for information. It's very scattered and very non-linear. You can track down data, and sometimes it's there and sometimes it's gone. Sometimes you can't find it again. And I'm going to reference back to information that I gained as a child before computers were a major thing in our lives. And those are libraries. And a lot of people ask me where I get all my information from and how I memorized all this information. And back when I was a child, we had to do this arduous process called reading books. And I didn't like reading books when I was young. But amazingly, I had to read a lot of them. And I read a variety of them. And I was forced to read things like dictionaries and encyclopedias. And I gained a lot of information that I cannot tell you where I got the information from, because it is in a book that was in a library or in somebody's study. And before books could be published, anything on the scientific avenue had to be peer-reviewed. That means other scientists had to agree, educators had to agree that the information inside the book was correct before they could publish it. And the reason for that is very simple, is because to print a single letter on a page was very expensive. Back then, authors used to be paid by the number of words they put on the page. And Stephen King, no offense to Stephen King, wrote 1,000-page books, which I read. And I found something very interesting about his writing style. And very quickly I learned he was being paid per word on page, because a lot of the pages were fine print, and he used a lot of does and ifs and ofs. He used a lot of words that were around 3 letters. And I mean a lot. You go back and read his books and you realize you can skip a lot of his pages because he's using connective sentences. And it takes a while to get the idea out when all you're using is does, as, is, ofs, its. You know, they're not very descriptive words. And there's a lot of them. So he was being paid by the word, and we found that out pretty quickly, as were most writers. And the problem with writing a science book or a dictionary or an encyclopedia is they were being charged by the letter. So they needed to condense the information down to the lowest possible form, so that way they didn't just drone on with information and get charged lots of money for lots of pages. So we learned a lot of information by reading books because it was condensed information. You would have to extrapolate or go to another book to read more information on that subject, in which case you had to read more books. And so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of education. To get an education, read one book, but that'll lead you to 3 others. Well, if one book led you to 3 would lead you to 9. You just read book after book after book, regardless of what you wanted to do. If you wanted the information, you had to do a lot of reading. Well, now, with the advent of the internet, it doesn't cost anything to put a letter on a page. And it doesn't necessarily have to be peer-reviewed before it becomes published, because anybody can self-publish any article they want now. And it's very difficult to find peer-reviewed sources of information without a huge amount of ads. And ads have a tendency to lead you astray from your target information. Either you walk away from the website because there's too many spam buttons, and you're not getting any information because there's too many ad baits in the middle, and you accidentally touch part of the page and suddenly you've gone somewhere you don't want to be. Or you have to pay to get the information. Libraries were free. Not anymore. Because now having information in libraries, to my knowledge, because I went to a library recently and there were no encyclopedias, there were no dictionaries. All it was fiction reading material. So I went to a second library, slightly better. But again, no encyclopedias, no dictionaries, no core reference information. There were some nonfiction educational books. That was good in a variety of subjects. But what used to be full shelves, top to bottom, the whole width and breadth of the shelf, was now sparsely populated, low density, and many of those shelves only had 4 or 5 books per unit, which means that either they're not replacing their books when they're damaged or stolen, or they're not bringing new books in because books aren't being made anymore. And that's disconcerting. So again, getting back to the idea that we're on the internet talking about this, discussing this, I suggest, and I strongly suggest, looking into your reference materials and your source materials and finding out if you can get better information, because it's becoming more difficult for me in America to do that. Anyways, stuff to think about.